video is going to be absolutely wild because we're diving into something nobody saw coming. The Scooby-Doo gang could actually figure out that the Light Yagami is Kira. And I'm not saying that just for fun. I've got 4 huge pieces of evidence that prove it. Evidence 1. The Scooby-Doo gang are experts in all things weird. Picture this. In some super alternate timeline, our favorite talking dog and his friends end up investigating none other than the mysterious case of Kira after catching the news that unexplained crimes are happening all over Japan. The gang, as always, is made up of one-of-a-kind characters. You've got Shaggy and Scooby, basically the ultimate cowardly, food-obsessed duo with a heart of gold. Fred, with his almost supernatural knack for spotting traps, and Daphne, who's not just gorgeous, but also knows how to throw down when she needs to. But the real key to this mission? None other than Velma Dinkley. Velma is the brains of the operation, and I'm not exaggerating. She's ridiculously smart. Seriously, she could out-debate Andrew Tate while tipsy. She's always the one connecting the dots and cracking the toughest mysteries. Her level of genius is so undeniable that even DC Comics acknowledged it. In one comic, Batman himself offered Velma the chance to become Robin. Yep, that actually happened. And it's not a one-off. Scooby-Doo has crossed over with DC multiple times, and in every single one, Velma proves herself as one of the best detectives in the multiverse, right behind the Dark Knight himself. With that in mind, it's not hard to imagine Velma solving the Kira case. After all, Light Yagami isn't flawless. He slips up. His first big mistake? Using the Death Note to take out Kuro Otoharada during a live broadcast that aired only in Japan. In the original story, that exact detail is what tipped L off and kickstarted his investigation there. Velma, with her razor-sharp logic, would absolutely catch the same clue. Kira has to be in Japan, and she wouldn't stop there. She'll probably also deduce that Kira is most likely a super smart student. Why? Because most of the deaths happen after school hours, and a lot of them carry this almost childish sense of morality. Like someone with a really simplistic, black and white view of good and evil is behind it. Digging deeper, Velma would start to notice how every death has this eerie, supernatural vibe. It's not coincidence they all drop dead from heart problems. That would push her to consider something beyond logic, maybe even something mystical, lurking behind the so-called life cancellation. Eventually, she'd piece it all together. Kira needs both a name and a face to kill his victims. And of course, she'd also notice that every single target shows up in the news or on TV beforehand. Smash that like button and hit subscribe because we've gotten even crazier stuff coming up, like who would win in a fight, John Cena or Frisia? Lol. Evidence 2. Light Yagami is so not ready to go up against the Scooby Gang. Think about it. Velma doesn't have access to Interpol's entire database, or the backing of the Japanese government like Elle did. And funny enough, that's actually the gang's biggest advantage. See, Soichiro Yagami, Light's dad, worked directly with Interpol and the Japanese police. That gave Light access to all the classified intel on the Kira case. He basically had a front row seat to every move Elle was making as the net was closing in, which forced him to play it super careful and ice cold so he wouldn't slip up. But here's the twist. The Scooby Gang comes straight out of the land of burgers and shotguns. Yep, the good old US of A. And if there's one thing they're known for, it's working completely solo. They don't need the Japanese police backing them up. Their entire investigation, all on their own. And what happens then? Light gets way too cocky. He'd assume the cops in Interpol were stuck, making no progress. And he'd chill out, keep running his evil plan without covering his tracks as obsessively as he did in the anime. That's exactly where Velma steps in. She'd notice real quick that Light has insider knowledge. Example, early in the series, Light goes from taking out criminals he sees on TV to killing inmates whose cases aren't even public. He even targets people he could only know about with confidential police data. The single clue cuts down the suspect list by a ton. And guess what? It puts Light, aka the son of Japan's police chief, smack in the middle of suspicion. Evidence 3. Logic only shows up when it wants to. Here's where the cartoon factor kicks in. In the Scooby-Doo universe, logic basically comes and goes depending on what the plot needs. That means the gang gets access to all those ridiculous abilities that only exist in cartoons. Insane coincidences, impossible escapes, and solutions that make zero sense but somehow work because, well, cartoons. And under those rules, the chances of them busting Kira are pretty much endless. Here are a few examples. Scenario 1. Shaggy and Scooby are just strolling down the street where Light lives, when suddenly they see apples floating in midair. Of course, nobody else notices, but they do. They follow the flying apples, only for Scooby to overhear Light talking to himself, plotting his evil master plan with someone named Ryuk. Boom! Case closed. Scenario 2. Thanks to pure plot magic and their classic dumb luck, Shaggy and Scooby somehow befriend the chief of police. Yep, Light's dad himself. The guy casually invites them over for dinner, and what happens? The two end up stumbling across a list of names hidden in a bag of potato chips. Mystery solved. There's a small, but real, chance the gang could just spot Light walking down the street with Ryuk. Why? Because in plenty of episodes, they've proven they can actually see ghosts and spirits. If Ryuk counts as one of those, then game over. They see him, follow him, and expose him. Sure, that ability is inconsistent, but hey, it's Scooby-Doo we're talking about. The gang ends up at Light's house because of, plot reasons. At that point, the odds of them finding the Death Note are sky high. Fred, with his sixth sense for traps, would instantly notice something fishy protecting a suspicious drawer. That would lead him straight to the deadly notebook. Or if not, Scooby could just sniff out the gasoline Light uses in his traps and lead the whole gang straight to where the notebook's hidden. Result? Total victory for Mystery Inc. Conclusion? Light Yagami would be absolutely toast against the unstoppable, miraculous, all-powerful force that is Scooby-Doo and the gang. In the end, I think the real secret weapons aren't Velma's deductions or Fred's traps. It's the Scooby snacks. Honestly, those things have gotta be what give them their detective superpowers. I should probably buy a box myself. Might make me a little less dumb. Lol. Final evidence, Kira could never take down the Scooby-Doo gang. Imagine Kira decided to write the gang's names in the Death Note. What would happen? Since they're public figures, their names and photos are all over the internet. So yeah, theoretically, Kira could track them down in seconds. You might think, okay, they're done for, but not everyone would fall victim to the Death Note. Daphne and Velma would probably be out of the game pretty quickly. But Fred, Shaggy, and Scooby, that's a whole different story. They'll be practically immune. Why? Simple. Fred and Shaggy's real names are hidden. In Mystery Inc., Fred's real name is such a mystery that even he doesn't know it. Shaggy is similar. Shaggy Rogers isn't his real name, and almost nobody knows what it actually is. So even if Light tried to write them down, he'd only get 3 chances. And remember, one of the Death Note's biggest rules is that if you mess up someone's name 3 times, that person becomes permanently immune. Of course, there's the Shinigami Eyes option. With those, Light could discover Fred and Shaggy's real names. And then, yeah, they'll be done for. But even then, one last hope would remain. Scooby-Doo. Why is Scooby untouchable? Because the Death Note only works on humans. And Scooby, even though he talks and solves mysteries, is still a dog. That makes him 100% immune. So if Kira somehow managed to take out the rest of the gang, Scooby would be the one to piece everything together and figure out that Light is Kira. And we all know what happens next. The Great Dane, teaming up with Interpol or Japanese police, would bring him down.